Okay, good evening everybody. My name is Stephen. I'm on the OfferZen team. And there are a lot of OfferZen people here tonight. They are wearing shirts with octopi. Lots of octopuses on their shirts. Please, if you need anything, find them. Firstly, thank you everyone for coming. It's a full house, looks like, so thank you very much. We start with thanking our sponsors as well. Derivco, thank you for sponsoring, Luno and Aruba. We've had the Aruba Jamaica song in our heads the whole week. Thank you for that as well. Tonight we are talking about sparking in innovation culture in the workplace, specifically focused on tech companies. We are going to be talking in this room, and afterwards we're going to write some blogs and publish some videos. And we'd also like very much if you guys tweeted and told our story or this story to your networks and with your community. So you'll see at some point the hashtag and the handle. The handle is @OfferZen and the hashtag is #TheFutureOfWork, #TheFutureOfWork. So if you're not going to tweet for us, tweet for yourself, because you can win this beautiful hoodie. Not just the canvas. So, there we go. All right. So some lucky tweeter will be selected to win not that hoodie, a hoodie of that size, of your size. So yeah, that hoodie as well. If you prefer that one as well. Okay. So to introduce our speakers, we have Quraish, who's the CEO of Derivco. Derivco based in Durban, and when I was chatting to Quraish, I asked him, so how many people work there? He said we're over 2,000 people, of which 1,400 of them are in the Durban campus. I asked about his business. He said 97% of the business is done offshore, and it was like pretty incredible stats. Alexandria is the CEO and co-founder of Digs Connect, and I asked her how many people work there, and she said Bobby, Jimmy, Ali. She literally didn't know. She had to count, and she stopped before her hands ran out. So it's a little bit of different worlds here, and that's generally the plan. So we've invited these two incredible humans to join us tonight and have a conversation with you around what culture means at different levels and for different people in the tech space. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our special guest this evening, flew down from Durban, so thank you very much for coming. And we're going to hear a little bit about what it means from Derivco's side, and then afterwards you'll get your chance to ask him a couple of questions. So, over to you, Quraish.
Firstly, thank you for having me down in Cape Town. I just want to have a second to say a special hello to my old boss. His name is David Ville. He's sitting down here in the front with his lovely, beautiful wife, Alida. I've tried for many years to get away from him, but it's not working. And he's taught me a lot of what I've known and what I've implemented at Derivco, having started there recently. So thank you so much for having me down to Cape Town. It's 1 degree warmer in Durban, and it is glorious. All the way here to freeze my ass off. I'm really enjoying the cold weather in this place. Am I bouncing in and out? Is that a bit better? So I think let me start by talking about why I'm here in the first place. The guys from OfferZen sent me a really cryptic message on LinkedIn. I had done a conference a little while ago, and the conference was in Johannesburg. It is called the DevConf. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. Have you?
Yeah.
Yes, some of you? Okay. It was the most disastrous presentation I've ever done. So there's nothing like standing in front of your old boss and him watching how crap you are. What a good job he's done. I also see a few familiar faces. There's Eugene Jessen, used to work at Derivco many years ago, and there's 2 other Derivco people here. Hands up. Shout out, man. If it was Durban, this whole room would be full.
Sure.
So I know that we said that we're going to talk about Derivco and what's the company about and the culture at Derivco. So I'll give you a few anecdotes about that, but it's not really a focus on Derivco. It's more my take on culture and why I'm here to talk to you guys today. I'm personally not qualified to have this conversation with you. I do have my beliefs, and I think I'm going to talk to you about my opinion on them and the lessons I've learned throughout my career as a developer and moving through the different management roles that I've had through the years. So I'm going to give you my opinion, and again, it may differ with yours, and I'd love to have a conversation with you later. So when we're having those eats, mostly the sugar out there, just come and chat to me. I'll be full of energy and rearing to go. The real reason I'm here is because the smart people at Derivco, and you'll see them up on screen, are the ones that actually make this organization that I work for successful. They've taught me most of the lessons that I've learned, and they've helped me actually become a better manager. And I hold this position only because of the will of the people at that organization. Now, I'm sure many of you have similar stories at your companies. I'm sure most of you love working at your companies. Let me ask, how many of you love working at your organizations? Most of you. You can easily spot the people that have their managers in the room, eh? Yeah. And I think I just wanted to spend some time talking to you guys about why I think company success is purely about culture. If you don't address every single question that you have or decision that you're making with the culture first and what the impact is going to be to that, I don't think that you're going to end up with the best decision made. And we've experienced it time and time again, certainly at the company that I've worked at. And I'm sure that some of you may have experienced it at your organizations, because no company is perfect. But there are a few important points that I do want to touch on that speak to whether you're investing in that culture or not. One of the things to remember is that the culture is the safety net for that organization. It ties all of us together. It's the fabric of your company. And what it is whenever the times are bad, it's that safety net that's going to save you from pretty much anything that you encounter. It's the way that people work together. It's how you function as a group. And it's important to remember that it's made up of the people of the company. It isn't one special individual. It isn't a small group of people with specific titles. It isn't a group of people that are pretty much sitting around, ticking the boxes, day to day, 9 to 5ing. It's the people that are invested because they're excited about what they do. Most of you are in the room because you're technologists. I used to be a technologist. I think I still am to some extent, if I could figure out how to work this clicker. But we're passionate about what we do. We do it because we love what we do. And that's what builds a great culture. If you're allowed to express that love for what you do in a way that makes a difference to you and those people around you. It's the things you do when nobody's around, when nobody's watching. Those are the items that make it really important for you to invest in your cultures, when you are able to do the right thing, regardless of who tells you to do it, regardless of who's watching. A lot of the time, most of us focus on the hierarchy. So one of the things that I've seen through the years is that culture is very easily eroded when it's left up to somebody else because of the title that they hold. When the instruction that comes down is made in isolation from an individual with a big title, and there's no conversation that happens with the people on the ground that are impacted by the choice. Hierarchy should matter nothing, and it doesn't. To a culture that works, the hierarchy is irrelevant. Every single individual in that organization, within that culture, is responsible equally for how it plays itself out. And when it comes to your rescue, when you're struggling with certain challenges. I use an example, which I'll talk about now. It's a funny one. Whenever I tell it to the guys at Derivco, they laugh at me because it sounds weird, so just tell me if it sounds weird. But the way I describe the culture at Derivco, where I work, and this is, I'm a newly appointed CEO. I say newly, it's been about 15 months. Yeah, around about 15 months since I've been in the role. And when I first stepped in, I thought it was important for people to have a voice. And the way to describe it to them was, we at Derivco like to see ourselves as a really large machine. It's a lot of people. We're working around the world, teams working internationally. We work on products that deliver internationally. So we all need to work together. Each one of us is a cog in that machine. And my cog is no bigger than yours. Okay. So every single one is important. And if for any reason one cog stops working, the whole machine breaks down. And that's a really important point because, again, culture has no view on your title. It has no view on your background, on your race, on your language. And as technologists, I hope that you'll actually remember that point because we talk in a language that is boundless. It doesn't discriminate. We build product that is translated across the world to multiple devices regardless of what they're running. So this should be no truer for technologists than anybody else. I think the one thing that's really important is just making sure that your culture is, and this is where it's truly tested, by the way, is resilient to failure. And that's the one thing that you have to embrace if you really want to build a good culture, is that you have to make sure that there are opportunities that you take that may result in failure. Even if it's a 90% chance in failure, take the leap. The lessons that you're going to learn from that are going to be tremendous, and you'll end up growing like you can't believe from it. So failure is really important, and it plays an important role in determining whether your culture can withstand any issue. That fabric I spoke about and the safety net that we talk about, it comes into play whenever you have one of these major failures. Once again, my beliefs. And these are some of the things that I've experienced in my past. So I've been in a number of roles at Derivco. I said I was a developer, and I started off there as a developer. I moved through a number of different roles as a developer and then into management. I think I was so bad at writing code that you eventually asked me to become a team lead rather. So I went and I did that. And while kind of going through that process of heading into management, no experience managing people, no experience dealing with customers or running product. All I really knew was the code, and it was the best code in the world. Just you guys who were clapping there in front. Yeah. So pretty much in that state, you don't really know what you're doing. You tend to try things, and most of the things that you try are the things that you thought you could do better. I still remember myself saying when I was a developer, talking about my manager. His name was Bruce Manson. Lovely guy. He's in New Zealand at the moment. He's a CTO for another company. Just search for Bruce Manson CTO, New Zealand. And I treated him like absolute crap while I was a developer at his team. I was like, I could do this better, I could do that better. I don't know why this guy makes those types of decisions. How many of you have had that conversation? Yeah? Most of you. Yeah. I'm sure you've had it at some point in time. Okay, so I used to have those types of conversations in my head. And when I stepped into a management role, what I did was I decided to right those wrongs. I was like, well, I knew how to do it better, so that's what I was going to do. And I implemented those types of changes. And a lot of the time you end up making these types of mistakes. And inevitably, I ended up growing in my career. And when I ended up in an exec team, we ended up making decisions that resulted in all these things that you see up on screen. We focused predominantly on delivery. It resulted in a breakdown in the culture. People ended up focusing on just their own selfish needs. They looked at what was going to get them a bonus, not what their friend next to them or their partner next to them needed assistance with that would have made the company stronger. So it's all of these types of items that result in failure if you don't invest in your culture first. I'm really trying with this quicker, I promise. There we go. It's going to lead me on to Donna. Do you guys know who she is? No? Donna Dubinsky. She used to be the sales and distribution manager for Apple in 1985. Most of you weren't born then, but those of you that were, Apple was a fledgling company that was actually doing quite well in that era. There's a story about her with Steve Jobs. Most of you know who Steve Jobs is. Yeah. How many of you have Android devices here? Yeah. I like to call those people future iPhone users. Yeah. It's not meant for coding. It's meant to be a phone. So Donna, at the time, was 3 levels lower than Steve. He was the chairman of the organization. And they were going through a number of different changes to try and increase distribution and try and wipe out Microsoft. That was their target. Steve walked in one day and said he wants to totally change the way they do distribution. He wanted to wipe out the 7 distribution channels that they had across the United States, kill the warehouses, and go with a just-in-time model. So when you order, that's when they'll start building, and they'll probably run their distribution channel a lot smoother with that. Donna disagreed, and she tried to have her voice heard. It didn't work. She was made a part of a task team that ended up trying to debate whether this was a good idea or not. And most people knew better. I mean, you've heard the stories of Steve Jobs, vice president of a particular product. Do you know what the number is? If the guy says no, Steve fires him on the spot. If you don't like your salary, he puts your salaries up on the wall for everybody to see. He's a hard guy to deal with. Yeah. Very opinionated, and he made the right choices a lot of the time, which is why Apple's one of the most successful tech companies in the world. But Donna didn't let that stop her. She still disagreed. Everybody else in the room agreed with Steve. I'm assuming most of them because they were afraid. They went through the process of doing this task team, which was a waste of time. They got to the end of it, and everybody pretty much agreed with Steve's idea. And Donna was still the only one singled out not agreeing with the idea. She ended up walking over to him, which nobody did at the time, and said to him that if he doesn't give her 30 days to come up with an alternate proposal, she's going to leave. And she was doing quite well, actually, with distribution at the time. So he gave her the 30 days. She sat down with a group of people, they worked together, they came up with a proposal, they used some of Steve's ideas, and they kind of tweaked it into the idea that she had, presented it, and that's the thing that ended up getting Apple pushed up the chain and Microsoft losing a large volume of share across the United States. She then went on to found a whole number of studios. She was also involved in the Palm Pilot. Any of you know what the Palm Pilot was? Yeah, some of you do. Yeah. And I think it was Spring was the alternate Palm Pilot. She was involved in that organization as CEO. Really successful lady, extremely strong. And the reason I'm telling you the story is not to talk about what Donna did, because I think that's all within all of your power, but to talk about what Steve did. So, you either love him or hate him. Most people hate him nowadays. But the thing that Steve did really well was he created an environment that allowed fear to not exist. If you wanted to have your voice and you were brave enough to do it, you had the opportunity. The people of the organization created an award in response to Donna's challenge to Steve, and they hand that award out every year to the person that challenges the CEO on the ideas that he's got and wins the argument. So it just speaks to the culture that they're trying to breed within that organization. The next lady that I want to talk about is Carmen Medina. She's a pretty exciting lady. This is a horrible picture of her because she works for the CIA, so she's very private. You can't find any pictures elsewhere. But Carmen Medina worked at the CIA many, many years ago when the internet was still fledgling. And what they were trying to do back then was obviously communicate on intelligence issues. The problem with those issues is that it was coming through snail mail or faxes. And they had the internet. It was developed by them. So they weren't using that mechanism or that network to then communicate intelligence across the world and across all of their agencies. She pushed for it, and eventually she got told by one of her friends, if she carries on down this path, she's going to lose her job. So she was so frustrated at another meeting where they were talking about this idea of using what was called a wiki of sorts for the intelligence agency. She had an outburst, and it was pretty bad. She went home that day. She thought of resigning. She looked for another job. She was off sick for 3 days after that explosion. She came back to the office. She resigned from her post, and she took a really junior post elsewhere that took her out the limelight. She stayed there for 3 years until she eventually decided to get back into the organization, to commit to the culture that existed at the CIA and change where they were going to. And inevitably what she did was she gathered the people around her. She used the people within the culture to try and help her foster the idea. People started using her wiki and her blog to start sharing their intelligence across the world, and they weren't seeking out the approval of their superiors throughout the process, which was a very different CIA to what was in place not even a short while before she decided to reinvest. Carmen ended up really successful, being an executive director when she left her role eventually at the CIA, and it changed the face of the way intelligence is shared across the globe just by her pushing the idea. But more importantly, and this is the point I want you to take from it, she could have just written it off and moved on and gone elsewhere. But instead, she decided to invest and commit to the culture that she had joined. And if you're going to be a part of it, then jump in with both feet. And that's what she did. She pushed that agenda and made sure that she got past her challenge. I think it takes everybody in an organization to make a culture work. It requires that even if you have a difference with regards to the decision that has been made, or you're struggling with something that has been executed within that space, that you need to put the energy in and jump in with both feet. Change it from within. Cooler talk, as exciting as it is not going to make the difference. You are going to make the difference. So if you do have a problem, I would suggest that you try and tackle it with your people around you. I'll tell you a personal story because I'm going to get kicked off stage just now, so let me just go into it quickly. When I first took over, the organization had just gone through a period where 7 years we eroded the culture to the point where it was super selfish. People would just focus on their tiny pittance of a bonus. They would not help the individual sitting next to them. It wasn't an environment I was proud of, and I helped create it. But when I stepped in, I said that one of the things that I really wanted to change, and I tried to do it previously, I just wasn't successful because I didn't have the authority to. One of the things I wanted to change was the decisions that I make were going to be governed by the people on the ground. So we have what's called an ask session. It started in my first month, and it's a session similar to this, where anybody can join, and people join from around the world on Skype, and they join me in the meeting room if they're not feeling too lazy. It's a 400-man meeting room in an office of 1,400, and I get like 200 people that join me there because the rest of them all dial in on Skype.
technologists who care. Yeah. So we sit down and we have a conversation. This is my first one. And the instruction is that you can ask any question. I'll respond to whatever it is, no problem. And there's a guy by the name of Kamal that asked the question. And he started off like this. He says, at your previous role, you set out to do a whole bunch of things. You haven't achieved all of them. And you also set out to fix a number of issues, and you haven't fixed all of them. And you were meant to deliver a whole bunch of projects, and you haven't delivered a whole bunch of them. Do you think that you should have been promoted to CEO? And while that question, I mean, the gasp in the room was unbelievable. I mean, you could just feel everybody. He had a cap on. They called him Cappy. Okay, so he had a little cap on, and guys were just staring him down. You could feel it in the room. And I think that the thing that happened at that particular point in time was, even though I was trying to initiate a culture change, Kamal was the one that did it for us. He pushed us across that cliff and just made sure that we took the leap of faith to ask the question that's on everybody's mind, because it was on everybody's mind. Is this guy meant to be the right guy for us when he couldn't achieve the things that he set out to achieve in his previous role? And it was a great question. I fumbled around, I answered it somehow, but ultimately where I landed was that actually the answer to that question still remains to be seen, and the person that will answer it will be all of you, meaning the rest of the organization. I serve at the pleasure of the people of Derivco, and it's going to be that way forever at our company, because the whole company is the group of people that make that culture a reality. It's not the CEO that's sitting at the top. It does not come from a title. It comes from the people that contribute towards it. I've just got the 1 minute mark. Last point I want to make here is that it's people, not profits, that make companies successful. And if you're not going to have fun while you're going about doing this, it's pointless. So I'm going to show you a couple of cool pictures. So, because I don't have much time left. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. This was me at DevConf. I don't know what I was saying right then, but it must have been serious. There's the next one. This photographer is no longer working there, along with Kamal. Kamal's also fired. Kamal works in Cape Town now. One of you guys can hire him. And then I'll leave you with the last one. Just have fun while you're doing this. Make the culture the one that you want to be a part of. And good luck with the challenge. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so this part of the session, we're going to chat a little bit. I've got some questions. I did send them some of the questions beforehand. Some of them are surprise. And then, as I said, we'll take a break, come back and do this a little bit more, and then you guys can get involved in the discussion. So I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourself. You've obviously heard quite a bit from Quraish. So we'll start with you, Alexandria. So basically just, who are you? What is your favorite song right now? And if you could describe your personal culture in one word, what would it be?
So my name is Alexandria. And I am one of the co-founders of Digs Connect. Digs Connect is Africa's largest student accommodation marketplace, which I started when I was a student at UCT. My co-founder, Brendan, is here. And my favorite song is, I love music. I'm going through a big blues phase right now. So like Lightning Hopkins, I'm really enjoying Muddy Waters. It's so like, oh, I just drive around. I'm like, yeah. Okay. And I guess my culture in a word is passion. The good, the really good, they're like, it's so passionate, but also like the hectic part of passion, where you're just like driven to like insanity to do something.
Okay.
Oh, cool, it's my turn. Okay, cool. So answering the same question is hard. I don't need to go to my bio. We're good, right? Okay. Yeah. So I'd probably say challenging would probably be the way I'd describe it. If you're not experiencing something that is taking you entirely out of your comfort zone, that is not a part of what you do all the time, then you're not really growing, and you're not learning anything new, and not progressing as a human being. So I focus a lot on creating a personal culture of continually looking for new things to figure out. And it's anything. From, at the moment, it's RC flying. Do any of you fly RC planes? No remote control planes? Yeah, no, I suck at it. I nearly flew a drone into somebody's head the other day. So it's just learning about new things all the time would be how I describe it. And music?
Because I was telling Quraish, I dropped one of the questions. He said, yes. And I said, it's not the music question.
So this is going to be a long answer, okay? But it's a song called "The Kanamale" by Sunil. Have any of you heard it? It's a local track. Yeah, some of you would have. So it's a long story, but I'll try and shorten it. So my other half and myself were traveling. It's been a long week at work. And I traveled quite a bit. I was overseas and I got back and we just hadn't spent any time together. So we took a drive over to our place elsewhere in the country. Like it's about an hour and a half drive. It's late at night. I got back late. By the time we got there, it's now 8 p.m. And I'm driving into the driveway and I see this car broken down. And it's this youngster. His name is Junior. I introduce myself. I ask him if he needs help. His wife is in the car. His daughter's in the car. She's tiny. It's like -5 degrees out. So it's freezing. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm right here. Let's drop my car off. Give me your phone, and I'll charge it, and I'll help you fix your car. I don't know anything about cars, but anyway, we get there. I drop the stuff off. I try and help him get his tire sorted out. It's something to do with bearing. Maybe that's the next topic that I need to learn about. Who knows? So we're busy trying to fix this thing, and we couldn't get it done. So I drive his car into my place. Well, we push the car into my place, and then I take him home, which is another like 25 minutes away. We go back and forth, eventually done. Next day he shows up and he comes into my place and I was testing out a speaker and he says that he does music production. So he wanted to take a look at the speakers, so we're playing some music and I was using a kanamale to test the speakers out and I played it and Junior says to me, hey, that's my brother. So the next time you guys go to a local concert and Sunel's there, just go up to him and tell him that Junior's, well, his brother's friend from the farm who helped him said, how's it? Yeah. It's my claim to fame.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, cool. So to kind of give a little bit of perspective, so I think we've heard quite a bit about like Quraish and Derivco and where they are. So I'm super excited to have these kind of contrasting worlds of two different CEOs from different like journeys or businesses from different parts of their journey. So Alexandria, can you tell us a little bit about Digs Connect, where you guys are in your journey? How new are you? How old are you? How big are you? What are you guys doing at the moment? What are you struggling with?
So Digs Connect all started, I was a student at UCT and I was elected onto the Student Representative Council in my 3rd year. And this was right during Fees Must Fall. So it was a really interesting time to be in student governance. It was a trial by fire. I learned a lot. And despite all that going on, I also had, queues of students outside the doors of my office saying, we can't find a place to stay, we can't find student accommodation. There's posters on walls, but those are outdated. There's a list on the university website, but there's no pictures, and those have been taken. So how do you find a place to stay? And then I was basically dealing with landlords also calling in saying, we have empty rooms, we have vacancies, where are the students? It's not that there's a lack of accommodation, it's just that there's no communication happening. And so it was over a weekend that I built the first version of Digs Connect. So I actually am a bad developer. You joked about it. I really am a bad developer. It was a hideous website, but it just worked. It did the job, and it just kind of like exploded from there. It ended up dropping out, registering the company. So that's kind of how it all started. And Brendan jumped on board, and we rebuilt the whole website. He's a fantastic developer. And then we launched it in January last year, so it's about 18 months, so almost as long as you've been a CEO. That's the length of my company. We now list about 60,000 beds in about 15 locations nationwide, growing all the time. I think we add another 300 today, which is really exciting. And we partner with universities. The company, there's 10 of us, so I can count on one hand. We operate out of Cape Town and, all over the country. And in terms of company culture, we're so, it's become so organic. It started with just me, and then it was me and Greg and Brendan, and the founding team, and it was just us for a while. And having a culture of just like your founders is so different to anything else because it's like family. We spend all our time together. We go for dinner together. We spend our weekends together. It's just easy. It's just like there's this. You don't have to take care of anyone's feelings. Really, you don't have to worry about hierarchy. You can just say, just do what you got to do. And then we started making our first hires. And that was, it is a bit of a change. You can't kind of have the same sort of just like quite a hard attitude that we had towards each other. Like we were always pushing each other as founders, you know, be better. We have this phrase in the office we say, if someone's being whiny, we say, eat a spoon of cement and harden the fuck up. Like, we don't have time for you to like just work harder. And it's fine between the co-founders because you can do that. But when you have, you know, employees coming in, it didn't go down so well the first time I said it to someone. Other things also, I mean, like small things are quite silly. Like, I think I'm fairly funny. I like to make jokes. And I realized that, like, sexual humor, there's like a line that's sort of suddenly like, that appeared one day. I was like, oh, I can't make jokes about dick pics anymore. Like, should you like bring that back a bit? You know, there's like certain like rules and norms that start coming up. And so just talk about this company culture, how we started establishing that. And so I realized that I kind of was losing track of like what was kind of just between me and my co-founders, and this very like almost like sibling relationship. We could just be as like rough and honest and as we needed to be, to now actually trying to have to cultivate the space with other people coming in. And I was like, well, I need to actually design for this. Like, it's not like it's going to be at a point where I can just kind of like be. I need to think about what I'm saying and actually like cultivate the space. And I was having a really long chat with one of our investors about this, and he told me this amazing story. And he said that he went to go. They invest in a cannabis farm somewhere else. It's quite funny. And they're at this farm, and they're walking the farm, and they went to the farm next door. And the farm next door grew all sorts of things. They had, like, I don't know anything about crops, but like wheat, I suppose, and sorghum, and beans, and all sorts of like crops growing. They had cows over there, and sheep, and all these different like sort of things going. And the guy was saying, how do you know how to take all these different crops? Like, surely what like the wheat needs is different to what the beans need, or different to what the potatoes need. Like, how do you cultivate each of those crops and make them thrive? And the farmer said, we don't actually like farm the crops. We farm the soil, because with the right soil, like the right crops will grow from that. And I was like, that is such a powerful like metaphor for like company culture. I'm actually getting like chills now. And I was like, that's such an incredible metaphor, because it's actually like, it's about creating the right environment, like, and that will then lead to the best people, the best like output from everyone on the team, because it comes down all the way to the people. Like, everyone's got like personalities, and I love personality people, and I love when people have like really strong personalities and different ways of doing things and different approaches, and it's about really respecting that in every single person. And I want to create this environment where like, I know like people are going to roll their eyes, but the idea of a safe space, not where like, oh, we protect your feelings, like we're quite hard, but where you feel honored and you feel respected and you feel like you can actually fail, and like what you say is like not only do we want to hear it, like it's exciting and it's so valuable. And so that's kind of idea of like farming the soil, and that's become our go-to phrase with company culture Digs Connect, is like, how do we farm the soil in our company so that every person that comes there, every plant, you know, if it's from our developers to our marketing guys to our customer success people to, you know, like our student ambassadors, are they feeling that they're in like in this farm soil environment where they can just like thrive and flourish, and they feel so stoked to be there. Sorry, that's a long answer.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's so that you're in the early stage, right? You're like figuring out like what the word culture means.
Yeah,
at
very
some
much
level.
so.
So someone who's thought about the word culture, I suppose, do you ever figure out what it means? What does culture mean?
I suppose you have to internalize that. It's got to be something that is meaningful to you. It's got to be true to who you really are, and culture's got to translate that into an environment where that's accepted. The people around you accept that for what it is, and they use it for the strength that it will provide to everyone. And you have to do the same with the people around you. We all think that it's this ethereal thing that we're not going to be able to define. We can't put our finger on it, but it's that feeling that you have when you need assistance. You know where to go and you can get it. When you are trying to figure out what the right thing to do is, which direction to go in, you feel secure in the fact that if you make a call and it's the wrong call, it's okay. That's what culture is. So you can feel it. It's that innate feeling that you have whenever you're trying to do something in the organization. You're trying to make a decision. You're trying to be a part of something, and it's something that's larger than just you. When you've got this consciousness that shows you that there's this wide world out there, that third space feeling, that there's something here, that's the culture. It's not a special formula kind of item that you can't attain because nobody can define it. If you can define that feeling, which most of us would know when we felt that at one point, and then create a situation or an environment that allows for that to keep recurring, that's good culture.
And so it's this thing that's kind of interpersonal and it exists between the people, right? And
Yes.
as businesses scale, how does that get communicated? Does it, like, because you said it's not you, it doesn't start at the top, it's from everyone, and there's like the soil analogy.
Sure.
How does this transfer between people actually? Like if it's between the people at that kind of a scale?
Now, look, I mean, for a large organization, it's quite difficult, but you still have the same challenges that a small organization would. It's still hard to translate what you have in your head and what you think the culture needs to be and what you prize, and then also take feedback from people that are joining the organization and then mash that together and end with something that works for everybody. It's the same challenge, but the outcome is still the same. A culture is not down to one individual, but the leader of the organization needs to make it possible for that type of culture to be bred. Meaning you have to take away the hurdles that trip people up all the time. You have to take away silly mechanisms. One of the mechanisms, we're talking about innovation, I might bring it up a bit later, but innovation at most large organizations is usually treated as a big ticket item. There's a monetary reward attached to it, more often than not. And that I see as one of the hurdles, because why am I not allowed to innovate, even on the smallest of processes and the tiniest of items in our world that's going to make us just that tiny bit percentage better than what we do yesterday till today? And it's those hurdles that it's the leader's responsibility to identify and remove. Don't create bonusing mechanisms that are going to create internal competition between people. Don't single people out for failure when failure is meant to be a learning opportunity. And don't take away the learning opportunity. Don't shut down avenues that people have to have a voice, and don't make decisions in isolation. Like, those are the very simple hurdles that I think leaders are responsible for removing. But equally, the people that are working throughout that type of organization have the same responsibility to foster it. Because one person can't be in every corner of the business to ensure that everybody's living up to that culture. We all have to ensure that the family works the way it should.
So, I mean, innovation when you're 10 people, it's like an early stage, feels like everything's innovation sometimes, potentially. So you've got this growing culture, you've got people joining, and they're new. What are things that are concrete examples of what's happening in your world and your company now that you're looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, we can have this amazing culture, and this is an example of someone doing something that like makes me feel like the soil is fertile. Like, do you have concrete examples of that?
I've got a fantastic example. I've got a good one. It just happened this today, actually. So it was such good timing. So we have someone in our team who started out. We like to hire students because, you know, we're a student company. We bring on students because they're plugged in. So a fun fact about the company is that I'm the oldest person at the company, and I'm 26. So we keep it like, we like to hire students, and we had this one girl, and her job is basically, she's like our landlord liaison. So she chats to our landlords, make sure they're happy. She helps them with their listings, and it's kind of been her speciality. And then today, we had to have someone on the company that had to leave, and his job was working with all our school partners, so like our universities and the colleges. And I take his work on top of all my work, and I was like really stressed with it, and I was just like drowning in my work, and I just felt like I couldn't get through all of it. And then today, I came up to get some coffee, I came back to the office, and she's like, oh, I just want to let you know that I spoke to this one new school partner, and I've already onboarded them, and I've got through the process, and basically the entire process that I would go and onboard a school to partner with Disconnect in the school. She had done that entire process over the last like 3 days, just taking the initiative, done the work, because she knew that I was like drowning out of my work, like taking it on, learned what I've been doing, without even like asking for like direction advice, taking the initiative, like closed the deal, like hadn't done any training or anything, she just did it. And I was just like, that's because like we prize that so much at Disconnect, is this like innovative, this taking the initiative, you know, with all our employees. Like, taking the initiative, are you just like going up there and just like wowing us? And she done exactly that. And I was just like blown away. I was like, that's amazing. Like, you know, you saw where we were struggling, you saw like where the company was failing, and you just did it. And you're not like sort of like asking for like, how do I do it? She just did it. And that was really cool. I was like, yo, that's amazing.
So, okay, so you hire students, which is cool and cheap and interesting, but but it is your customer as well, so it makes a lot of sense. But okay, so you've got these students, and you've got this like clear energy coming from your company. So how do you communicate culture? How do you go like, hey, come look at us, and we have this great culture. It's going to be a great fit for you. Because I mean, what we see as a talent marketplace is we see a lot of people going, oh, cool, I want to work at that place. And if you're expecting like a quiet, put my head down and work kind of place, it may not be the place. How do you go about when those students come in for the interviews? How do you go about demonstrating that?
So there's two, I want to answer that in two parts. First is the onboarding process, how we communicate that culture, and the second is when someone's on the team, how do we communicate that culture. I'll start with the second part. So how to keep communicating culture, I think, to the team that exists is just with like constant communication. So concrete example is like I send out a weekly email. So on Sunday nights, I sort of like sit down and like find inspiration, and I send a long email to the whole company, to the investors, about what we've done that week, what the company's about. I include quotes from like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, and I'm just like, this is the vision and the mission, and we're doing incredible stuff, and because I think that's what it is about millennials, and that's what our company's about. It's who we hire. It's our target market really is millennials, and I think what millennials want is not just like you get to work and you leave, because you spend most of your life working. It has to be more than that. It has to be like a calling, you know? What like this millennial culture of like what you do with your life is your calling, it's your mission. It has to mean something more. That like when you're sitting there like day in and day out with like the same people, that it has to be fun, obviously. You have to enjoy the people you're with. If you like despise everyone, that's like a problem. But like you have to really like buy into that vision and that mission and believe the work you're doing is like super valuable. So that's the one thing I do, is I communicate that the whole time. Like, this is what we're doing it for. This is why we come here every single day. This is why we do that, the work. If it's the coding, every line of code. If it's every phone call to a landlord. If it's every cell partner with the university, every student, every person that calls in saying they've got issues. This is why we're doing it. For like we believe in this this mission of Digs Connect. Just communicating that, I think, really well. And then when it comes to onboarding people, I think that what you said is completely true about that everyone creates the culture, but also think that leading by example is very important. And I think between myself, Brendan, and Greg, the co-founders, we set like the standard about what is to be expected. So like in terms of, and we're all quite different in terms of our approach. So like Greg is like hectic. He's very much like by the book. He gets to work at a certain time every day, like early. He's very like systematic. He's very on your case. He's pro to micromanage sometimes, which I have been micromanaged by Greg many a time, and it's fantastic. It's made me a stronger person. Whereas like I'm very much like step back and like take the initiative and impress me. If you don't impress me and you don't like wow me and blow me away, I'm gonna be very disappointed. So it's kind of like that culture, and then I think we kind of then like also like things like I spoke about in terms of sitting down what I used to think was quite boring in terms of like not making like sexual jokes. That's actually quite important. Realizing that there actually is a line in the workplace, and knowing that treating people with like respect always, treating people with honor always, creating space where people can just be themselves and communicate their ideas like always. And between the three of us, like showing that how we treat each other was really important, where we couldn't actually be so hard on each other all the time and be like, that actually wasn't good enough, this is like really bad work, and kind of like watching how we treat each other, because then everyone else would see that and then emulate that. So making sure that if we have to have a hardcore discussion about something, it's like the time and place to have those discussions.
Yeah, okay, that makes a world of sense. So it starts at some core, and everyone else around you is kind of like is picking up what you're putting down, I suppose, unless it's the guy with the cap. But so Quraish, so you've got a wider problem, right? You've got over 2,000 people in the company, and you need, in order to have that many people, you need to attract a lot of people, and you need to keep them there, right? So it starts with like you, and then the people around you, and the people around them, and then it's the people around your company even. So you've got a ripple effect that goes really far out. How do you reconcile these kinds of thoughts with the challenge that you face from a culture perspective?
I think it's exactly like Alex said, is that you have to hold yourself to the perfect standard of what you're expecting from everybody else. So it's not a matter of, for a large organization, communicating it is harder. So email doesn't work. It's lots of face-to-face conversation. It's about communicating the same thing consistently. And every time, and in a large company, there are opportunities multiple times a day for you to not behave in the manner that you're expecting everyone to behave in. And you have to use those opportunities to display that standard is not going to be broken by you. So it makes it very difficult for anybody else to break that standard, certainly in the team that I work directly with, my team of executives. And thereafter, a concerted effort into the decisions that we make getting driven down into the different spaces is not driven down. Every decision that we make is a matter of engaging with a group of people about the decision before the call is made so that we can refine the call that we make. One of the accusations I should throw at the executives that used to exist in the board prior to me stepping in was that they hire a whole bunch of really, really smart people. I'm sure some of you feel this way. You hire, well, some of you maybe not, but you hire a really large group of smart people, and then you tell them exactly what to do and how to do it. You know, and what's the point in hiring smart people? If you wanted a bunch of just doers, you know, go to the UK and hire a bunch of people from there. That's just a dig at my Ipswich team, okay? And if you do ever make contact, please tell them I said so. But I'll throw another example in there with Hong Kong. So we have a Hong Kong office, and hierarchy matters in Hong Kong, just like it does in India, which is counter to the South African culture, and certainly the culture that we try to live at Derivco. So I would go over and I would attempt to communicate directly with people. So 9 hours out of the day, I'm out of my office. When I'm in Durban, when I'm in the UK, when I'm out throughout Europe, when I'm in Cape Town and Johannesburg, I'm not sitting in my office. I sit in my office at the end of the day and I deal with whatever I need to deal with. But otherwise, I'm talking to people and not through the hierarchy. Whereas in Hong Kong, when I did that, it freaked people out. So you have to actually put a lot of effort into understanding what the culture means for different diverse backgrounds and other cultural norms that exist in other locations. But you still need to take that leap, and they need to see you for what you are, and you living up to that standard before you can then communicate it to them. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, I might pick on it later after the break.
Okay, cool.
But
Perfect.
so culture is different everywhere, right? So it's different. It's open to interpretation. So kind of my last question before the break is like, what is not culture that people think is?
Can I rewind back to that last bit? I just want to say one more thing.
Sure.
It doesn't matter whether there's a difference in those background cultures. There's a common objective that everybody's pulling towards. So our vision statement at Derivco is achieving the impossible through one Derivco. What it talks to one team working as one and overcoming that challenge. Now, regardless of which office you exist in and what your cultural background is from the region that you belong to, that still speaks to how you need to operate at work. If you're ever looking for a direction that the compass is pointing in, that should give it to you. Everybody pulls in that direction. So it's important to have that common thread, and that's what makes it easier to have people operate under the cultural norms.
Right. So it's those, when you're small, Sunday night emails, just making sure everyone knows the common thread and that consistency.
With the same vision.
Yeah.
They're trying to drive it.
Yeah. So to the question, so what is commonly seen as culture? I mean, the foosball table gets a bad rap for that, but what is commonly seen as culture, which is like not culture in your opinions?
Ladies first.
We give our employees alcohol for free. We have every Friday afternoon, we have a bunch of beers in our fridge, and 4 o'clock comes, I mean, like, everybody just come over. Let's just sit on like the couches and the bean bags and have some beer. And it's like our round table at the end of the week, and everyone just talks about what they're working on. I think it was quite cool because, you know, maybe like our API developer will be like, you know, like really excited about these APIs he built. And he's like, I did this really cool thing. And for someone on our customer success team who never really chats to him, like, shouldn't even know that. And that's really cool now, because when she's trying to use it, she can be like, or customers, she can be like, you know, did you know that there's this thing happening in our company? And creating that personal relationship. And then for, like, you know, the API guy who never gets to speak to, you know, any of our landlords or our students to hear what, you know, what they're saying. So that kind of space where everyone can kind of chat about what they're excited, what they're proud about. That's really cool. And then giving them free food, free beer, I think that helps.
So the question was, what is not culture? And you just told me like all the things that aren't culture. So free beer is culture.
I turned every negative into a positive.
Apparently. Quraish, do you have any opinion?
Yeah, I'll add to that. So I'll talk about a personal example, and it's from a time period where I was an exec, and we had an exec director of HR at Derivco, and I thought that she was absolutely useless at her job. Yeah, I thought she didn't know what she was doing. She didn't understand what technology was about. She didn't take the time to try and invest and understand how HR could support where the business is going and where people are struggling. I had a bunch of opinions about why I thought she was useless. And she tried really hard to make a number of changes in the organization and push certain initiatives. And she struggled and she failed at some of them. And I used that as an opportunity to point out the failure, not point out the lesson learned from it and help her through the process, but rather point out the failure. And I was pretty much standing around watching this lady run and trip every step of the way. And it's really embarrassing to admit this type of story, but it's also, so back to the fact that it's challenging is part of the way I live my culture, is I have to challenge myself with the way that I behave on a regular basis. And that was one of those moments where I wasn't actually living up to what is important to me. And I would never do this in my personal capacity, yet somehow in the environment that I was sitting in, I was pulling this trigger with this lady, and when I could see the wall coming, I just let her run straight into it. That is a great example of agendas and silos and selfishness and arrogance creeping in to a culture because it was allowed to. I was allowed to operate like that. So were many of the other executives that existed on the team with me. And in stark contrast to that, so I'll point at Dave. When I worked with Dave, the team that we had around us, there was absolutely no letting any individual fail. So if somebody was struggling with what they needed to achieve and they were overwhelmed, somebody else came to the rescue. You didn't ask questions. They never needed to put their hand up and ask for rescue. You went to assist. This happened after that. So that's the behavior I grew up with. And for some reason, the environment allowed me to operate this way. And that's a real example of bad culture. And I've got tons more, which I've hopefully learned the lessons from. And where I've seen other people behave in a way that I'm not proud of. And we see it nowadays. And you'll always have that where people go off the rails. Your culture needs to allow for them to come back from that. You have to provide the support to pull them back online.
Okay, cool. So we're going to take a break. Now, Alex is holding a sign that says end. So, okay. So before we take a break, I'm going to try something. For those of you that have the LinkedIn app on your phone, just whip your phone out, everybody, quickly. This is a little experiment. So part of the reason for tonight is that we want you to connect with other people, right? So there's this cool feature on LinkedIn. So you don't have your phones with you. But at the bottom of LinkedIn, there's two little people, all right? Click the two little people. That'll open up your contacts. Right at the top, there's something that says Find Nearby. Click on that. Now, this is going to show you everybody in the room. LinkedIn, you can connect to them, go and find them, do all that fun stuff. So if it asks you to use your location, say yes, and you'll start seeing a whole bunch of people pop up there. So those are the people in the room. Feel free to connect. Find them in the break if you're interested. So we're going to take a break. We'll come round you up. Please connect with people. Go say hi. All right, we'll see you just after the break. Thanks very much. Okay, we're going to get started again. All right. So, who connected with someone on LinkedIn during the break? No? A couple. Way. Yeah, cool. All right, cool. So we are going to jump back in this session. We're going to ask a couple of questions. I'm going to call out one or two of my colleagues from the crowd and ask them a question or two as well. And then I'm going to open up. So we won't be long, and then you guys can have your say. There is a roaming mic somewhere at the back. So put your hand up, and then the mic will arrive at you when you want to ask the question. So we spent quite a bit of time before the break talking about culture, what it means to you two, being the CEOs of your respective companies, doing various different things to implement it. So I want to kind of switch perspective and say for someone in this room that's like a dev or a designer or someone in the organization, what does culture mean to them? And from your perspective, how should they be thinking about it? Open to either of you, whoever's feeling brave.
Okay, if I go?
Go for it, please.
You have to operate as if you're an owner of the business that you belong to. So if there's even the minutest of things that you could do to improve anything within your organization, I want you to feel duty-bound to do it. And if you're not brave enough to do that, then use the manager that you have with you and ask them what they would change in the organization or something that's frustrated them that they would like to overcome and become a partner in that journey. Practically, that's probably the easiest way for you to start making small differences. We call it getting fighting fit. It's about practicing the ability to get into the practice of continually looking for ways to improve things and being brave enough to take the leap to get it done. So that would be one of the things that I would focus on.
I think my answer for this one is, you spend most of your life working. I said this earlier, that it's from the age when you finish varsity or drop out of varsity, in my case, until, for longer and longer. We're living longer, we're working longer. You spend most of your life of working. And I think it's, what do you want to spend every day feeling, And for me and for my co-founders and for what we're trying to do at Digs Connect, it's about passion. It comes down to you're just so excited when you wake up in the morning. Am I destroying this microphone? You want to wake up every morning and feel so excited, you're yeah, it's Monday, that's awesome. I'm so stoked to be alive. I'm so stoked to be going into this room with these other crazy people, doing this crazy thing. And I think that's what I think that each culture is different in each company. So I think when you approach a company thinking, what am I buying into here? What is the story here? What is going to be my daily existence at this place? And I think it's being a part of that. So it's like what you said about buying into something, it's knowing that what you're buying into that company. So for Digs Connect, it's about passion, it's excitement, it's about thrilling, it's about pushing the bounds, about doing outrageous things. I probably shouldn't share this, but our new tagline.
Please don't if you shouldn't share it.
I can't share it. No, I can't. We're changing our tagline at the moment. It used to just be fine student accommodation, which is cool because it's obvious. Our new one is send digs pics.
I said don't do it.
Hee hee. And that's what we do at Digs Connect. That's the culture we have. It's outrageous. It pushes the bounds. It makes people think, are you sure you want to say that? Yes, we're always sure. That's our culture. And it's buying into that. And so that's what you need to join the company. I mean, you have to be able to just do the most outrageous thing and go with it.
I'm not sure if she's learned the sex jokes lesson yet. I'm just going to put it out there. You never know.
Okay, so maybe a harder question. So as organizations grow, so it obviously gets harder with scale, is that you meet people and you've got to hire people and you've probably been there, you're like, shit, we need to make this hire, we're moving and we've got funding and we need to move now. And you meet people and they're kind of on culture. And then 3 months in, you just feel that they're maybe not on culture. Is on culture a thing? Is there being
on fleek?
Yeah. Okay. So my question really is what do you do when you think someone's not acting culturally appropriately, not in the non-digs pics kind of way, but acting in a way that is contrary to the culture that you want to kind of foster within your environment?
I'm ready to dive in. So I got some really good advice from someone a while ago. I was really struggling with someone who's in my team. So I head up sales, business development, and someone's in my team, and because we need to hire. We raised the funding, and we're looking to hire, grow the team, expand operations, and we're interviewing, and we turned on a bunch of people because we were very particular about the first people joining our team. I mean, it's like sacred. It's like our little tiny little like nexus was now growing, and every person that joined would have like this huge effect on like the team. And so we said no to a bunch of people, and then this guy walked in, and he was just like perfect for the role. Perfect. We're like, this guy's incredible. Brought him on. And after a couple of weeks, it's just like he wasn't performing. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I spoke to someone about this. I had a mentor. And he said, when it comes to these issues you're facing, 90% of the time, it's because you're just a really shitty manager. and 10% of the time, it's just the wrong person. So you need to figure out what it is. Yeah, it was really good advice.
So, which was it? No, you don't have to answer that. Quraish, what do you say?
I'm feeling a 10% of that. Yeah. I'll probably talk about personal experience at Derivco. I mean, it was one of the first tech companies I was aware of. We've been around for 23 years. Most people don't know that. Don't even know who we are in Cape Town. We've been around for a long time. We've used cutting-edge technology. So people that were allowed to join, and if you lived in Durban, you knew about them. If you were allowed to join this organization, you felt really privileged. You worked with smart people, cool tech. You never got that opportunity elsewhere at other organizations. So getting through the door was really difficult. So when you went through the interview process, you sat down and you kind of had like a bunch of people sitting there, and they were interrogating you. And then you went away, and that was like an hour. And then you came back, and it was 2 hours, and there was another bunch of people, and they were interrogating you. And then you came back and did a 3-hour assessment, and then you had one final interview for an hour, and another group of people were interrogating you. And they were so counter to our culture that we ended up making a lot of mistakes employing the wrong people. And that was the interview process I went through, and they regret that mistake that they've made every day now. But we learned to make sure that our recruitment process reflected the culture that we wanted to exist in the organization. So what you experience when you're not a part of the organization should be what you experience when you're in the organization. And our culture focuses predominantly on assisting and helping each other achieve our goals together. So when you're in the interview, we try to take you through that journey, helping you understand whether Derivco is a fit for you, because it's a two-way interview. We're trying to find out if you have the right cultural fit for our organization and capabilities to do what we're expecting you to do. And equally, you're trying to find out if this is an organization you would want to belong to, that you'll feel proud to belong to, and you feel you'll be able to make a difference in. So we work hard to do that. And as a result of changing our process to that, we find that we get a lot more people joining that fit really well with the culture. But if it doesn't work, to answer your question, it's most likely the way that the individual is being managed is the way that we tend to treat the problem initially. And we go through a very lengthy process of trying to understand why there's a difference in what we experienced during the interview process and what we've experienced thereafter, and try and help the manager overcome it. Now, we're a large enough organization that if it's not working in one particular space, we try with the individual in a different space in our business. And if it works, great, and most of the time it does. There are the few odd instances where it doesn't work, and more often than not, the individual ends up finding their future elsewhere, but they do that at least with our support. There's very few burnt bridges at Derivco. So again, it has to reflect the culture that exists within the company.
I should ask that quickly,
Yeah.
but absolutely. I think it's like the buck stops with you, and you decide that, like, how am I failing this individual? If like an employee is like not managed to do their work, or they're in any way feeling like you're not kind of meeting the grade, how have I failed? Have I failed my communication? Have I put them in the wrong role? And I think when I started changing my thinking to that helped a lot. Where I realized that actually I need to shift the way that I was managing people.
Yeah, I got a similar piece of advice from someone previously on asking the same question. And they just said, look, if you think that someone's doing badly, just ask yourself, what don't they know? And that was just like a cool thing. It's like, what haven't you told them that making them act different to what you expect? Like you haven't shared something with them.
And more often than not, the answer to that question is that nobody's told them that they're doing badly. So you'll have the conversation, you'll skirt the issue, and you won't really call them out on the thing that's really frustrating you, or the thing that you want to understand better. You don't ask them why. You skirt the issue. More often than not, people shy away from that conflict, and that's actually where the problem starts. So we ask that question first, and if the answer is, well, I'm not really addressing it directly, then the problem's with management.
You should meet our co-founder, Greg. He always lets you know when you're letting him down. There's one time I did a proposal for this this campaign we're going to run in Pretoria. It's a huge university. They're really excited. And I was so excited. I sent it through to him. I was like, Greg, this is a good one. And he read it, and he was like, 2 out of 10.
Oh, okay. Sounds familiar.
Meet Dave. Yeah. He always told me when I was doing a crap job.
Yeah, that's one of the most useful things you can be told, right? Okay, so I've got limited time of like formal proceedings because I really want to open up because I know a lot of people in the break had many questions, which I can't remember now. So I'm going to ask like just the top piece of advice, like, right? So you're someone in a company, whether you're the person that's like in charge of the entire company or just someone in there. What is the one sentence like takeaway that you give the person going, if you want to have a great culture in this place, this is how you can do it? No, it's like, it's not that easy, but if you could have a bash at it, what would it be?
Can I jump? Yeah, please. It's back to my original point. You are the owner of that organization. You know, you're dedicating 8, 9, 10 hours a day of your life to being somewhere. Make it be the place that you want it to be. So act like an owner. And if you're not allowed to act like an owner, find a new company where you can act like an owner.
I think, you know, you think what culture is, it's kind of like it's a shared, like it's like a shared, like sort of social contract. You know, we kind of like, we buy into the same way of behaving. And I think that has like, you know, what ties that together? What's like the core, or like the foundation of that? And for us, it comes down to passion again. Like it comes down to, we're like an inherently like millennial company. We're so proud about that. And we really like take those millennial values of like authenticity. We're completely authentic and we don't like pull our punches. We are as loud or as weird as you gotta be. And we are passionate, absolutely. Like if you believe this is your calling, like this company, our mission, like this is like, it's a mission to really do good work. You know, we honestly believe, and I know like startups say this and people roll their eyes, but we really believe we're changing the world. Like honestly, and everybody comes in, it's like, this is what we're doing, honestly, like with every single day. And if you feel that excitement and this passion, then like, this is the place for you.
Yeah, I think you can, so if you follow these guys on Instagram, you'll see that is everywhere. It goes all the way out to the memes and the crazy things. So you guys seem to be super genuine. So thanks for those perspectives and those kind of like takeaways. So I'm going to open up to the floor. But before I do, we have some great companies that hire through us. We're both companies. We also have people that are in our organization that help a lot of software developers navigate choosing companies, right? So price is obviously a big thing, but we also have a bunch of other things that developers and people consider when joining jobs. So Ali, where's Ali? So I'm going to call on a colleague. Can we get Ali a mic, please? So Ali will tell us a little bit now. She works with us, so she's a talent advisor. So basically, software developers get help from Ali. I might get this wrong, so please correct me if I do. And the likes of Ali in basically choosing companies. So they'll come and some software developers will get like 19 offers on the first day and crazy things like that. And they go, Ali, where should I go? So my question to you, firstly, just like introduce yourself, tell us what you do, is what role is what we're talking about, what role does that have when people are choosing jobs? What have you seen with all the volume of people that you've spoken to over the last couple of weeks and months?
Sure, loaded question. So how's it, guys? I'm Ali. I'm a talent advisor at OfferZen. I've been working for about 1.5 years there. Personally helped quite a lot of people find jobs through our platform. A couple of people actually here, which is cool. So a large part of my position is helping candidates sort of get on the platform. And a large part of that is finding out, why they're leaving and what are they looking for next. And obviously a large part of, why they're leaving or what they're looking for next is the fact that any individual, when you're trying to figure out what you want to do in this world, is that you want to find meaning and you want to find purpose. And some people find that through contributing on a daily basis to something that makes a meaningful impact in the world and having a tight feedback loop that makes you feel like, cool, I'm doing this thing that I think that I'm doing. Other candidates find meaning in the sense that they're making themselves grow and be better. And sometimes those things go hand in hand, and sometimes they're quite separate. And fundamentally, you want to be able to achieve those things in an environment that's supporting of your current life. So work-life balance is also quite a strong, heavy requirement with people that I chat to. And so if fundamentally you want to find a space that feels natural to where you are, a lot of candidates, they want to be able to come in, feel that I'm adding value, that being here is not effort. I don't have to pretend to be anything that I'm not, fundamentally. And that's why genuinity is so important, or authenticity is so important. Like, as a company, you need to find out who you are and then own that and attract people who are the same as you. And the people that are the same as you and are attracted to who you are will fundamentally love what they do and will love being at work every day. And so, you might find some people kind of like dating. You meet some people, you're like, yeah, we got an awesome connection. I totally want to date this person. Maybe 3 months down the line, not so much. And that's okay. That's okay. At the end of the day, you want people to stay in the organization that's meant to be there. And if they're not, then they're not. And you send them on their way and you help them go on their mission. So fundamentally, people that I work with, culture is a huge aspect of finding that meaning and finding loyalty to where you are. And if they don't find that sense of like, I belong here and I'm contributing and I'm finding that meaning, either they're not going to be there very long or you're going to have to find other things to keep them incentivized, I guess. I hope that answered your question.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'm going to pick on one other colleague, Ulrika, over there. Sams, can you give Ulrika the mic? So Ulrika is an account manager. She has 160 plus companies in her portfolio. So my question to you, Ulrika, is like, it's wild out there on the talent scene. Software developers are hard to find. We know that. It's good for our business. But it sometimes sucks for companies because that level of genuinity or level of fit, it's difficult because you're actually selling your company. So you need to sell yourself above the other guys, but you need to remain genuine at the same time. So the companies that are hiring like through our platform, the companies that you work with, what kind of conversations do you have with them on reconciling, like, look, find fit, but also try and like tell people or sell what you're doing? How does that work?
So actually that's a question that we usually get very first when somebody actually joins the platform. So part of account manager job is to help set the company up of who they are and what they sort of represent. One of the conversations I have on a regular basis is, what are the reasons somebody needs to come and work for you? And one of the easiest ways to do that is to think of the 5 top reasons of what actually makes your company. So I actually really like the discussions that came up on tonight because a lot of them touched on all of those 5 reasons, which is usually what is our vision, what is our mission, what are our core values. So as Ali mentioned, a lot of people want to feel a feeling of belonging, a feeling of I'm making a change in the world. A second reason is what kind of work I will be doing, so my actual day-to-day work content. And very funnily enough, Ali actually pointed that out. It's like that growth feeling, that feeling of this is what makes me change, this is what makes me excited to go to work every day because I am working on setting up different systems in a different organization, and that's really exciting for me. The other 3 reasons touch more on what the person does in terms of career growth or hierarchical or horizontal growth. And then, of course, the 2 basic ones, which are benefits and compensation. But one of the really great things about being an account manager is you have a lot of times the difficult conversations of why a company decided to let someone go. And one of the reasons most that comes up is the person wasn't a culture fit. So not just entering into a company, but also the whole journey of that person throughout that process. Culture literally comes up at every single point.
Thank you. Okay, so fastest hands first. We're opening the floor to, wow, that was quite fast. The wide corner, that was really fast. All right, there in the corner. So questions, you can address your questions to anyone in the room.
So it links really nicely with what she just said is about culture. So what if your culture is excluding innovative, experienced people from your organization? What do you need to look at your own culture to actually shift and change it to attract people. So I'm going to use the Digs Connect example of the Friday night drinks. What if you're a single mom or a single dad and you can't actually use that time to actually be in that place after work hours having drinks with people? What does that mean for your success in that company? Because important things are discussed on those Friday nights and you're not there. And things that happen the next week, you're excluded from all of those discussions and those topics or new projects that will come up. And immediately you're excluded, and that affects your role in the company and how you feel valued. And immediately then you're going to leave. So that my question is, how do companies actually turn that around and see how can I change my culture to actually attract the people that I need to grow?
Can I answer? That's a really, really good question. I think inclusivity is fundamental to a growing company. And I think because, we started out, just me and then my co-founders, and then slowly me growing, we've kind of been winging it, to be completely honest. It's kind of like someone joins the team and we're mindful about their circumstances. And I think that, we've kind of, just been winging it. It's reached a stage where now I start designing for these things and being mindful of these things. And I think the first step is to create a space where people can talk about these things. So say we bring someone on the team and they don't want to drink because, let's say, for religious reasons, they don't want to actually drink, but they feel now everyone else is having beers and they're not having a beer and they feel weird about that. I think the first step towards success is ensuring that we've created a really wholesome, trusting space. So if someone feels like they can't participate, they can say, "Listen, Alex, I don't actually enjoy this. I feel comfortable to say that." I love the idea of the award for someone who challenges the CEO. I think that is so cool. And that idea where you can actually just bring up whatever you want. And then I think just being very mindful of those things. So, every time someone comes on, are you mindful about those constraints? And then just designing more inclusive activities. So maybe it's rather, midday lunches, or maybe it's the waterfront does this really cool yacht trips. That can definitely be a company expense, I think. I think, kind of having a conversation where we're asking everyone else for their feedback. And at the moment, I'm actually busy working on our quarterly strategy for the next quarter. It's my first time building a quarterly strategy also, which is a new experience for me. And when the first step of building the strategy is you look at the diagnosis, what is the current context, situation, opportunities, and you build it from there. And so my first thing I did is I then went into my little corner of my desk, and I sat there and I spent 2 days just working on it, and I was like, this is going to be the best strategy ever. And then I realized I hadn't actually spoken to anyone else in the whole team about what they thought the situation was. And I was like, no one's going to buy into this if I haven't actually gotten feedback. So then I went to everyone and I was like, what do you think the problems are? What do you think the opportunities are? And really engaged. And I think that was a really good lesson for me to realize that in every big decision we take, if it's, especially with company culture, am I actually engaging? Because like you said, you serve at the pleasure of the people, and I love that. You're here to serve the pleasure of the people who work in your company. So I think constantly having a really a good communicative space where everyone can feel like they can just chat to you all the time about anything on their mind.
Cool. Was there a question just behind you, Sams?
This is specifically for around Derivco being an international company. The good thing about tech is, of course, that we can be distributed, remote, international, all of these things. And I find myself in a space where we are 4 companies that came together across multiple continents, multiple offices, multiple cultures, multiple tech languages, everything. So how do you bring that together? How do you build that culture internationally? A lot of our teams are distributed. And what lessons have you learned around that? How can we move towards a better culture on that level?
You're probably not going to like my answer, but I'll go anyway. The only solution that you actually have is face-to-face engagement. So starting an international company, it fails and succeeds based on whether you have a collective goal for all of those different divisions. If you don't, like larger companies out there don't, what they do is they tend to distribute the objectives to certain divisions sitting elsewhere so that they can be wholly contained within the international division. But if you're all in multiple locations pulling towards the same goal, what it actually requires is a common language. And it's not the tech language you use, but rather the language that we speak of when we talk to each other. And that's the body language, the way we convey our messages, the relationships that we build when we're trying to pull on teams from elsewhere to assist. And it's an expensive solution, but the alternative is way more costly. The alternative is sitting around going through cheap. VCs don't work. They'll work for a time, but you have to build a relationship first to be able to then converse over VC so that your message gets conveyed. And it doesn't just get conveyed with the words coming out your mouth, is the lesson that I learned when working with international teams. And the second one is that you have to be unrelenting with your local teams, which means you have to draw a hard line with regards to rhetoric that is going to insult and degrade the work happening elsewhere when people believe that other parts of your organization are not pulling their weight or not doing a good enough job or the solution isn't right. You have to make some hard calls. And you have to pick what is the right solution, and you have to lead that by example. Both of those together are hard. It's expensive. You've got to get those people that are noisy out the country to go elsewhere and spend some time. Sometimes they refuse, so you're going to have to just get them on that jet plane and get them over there. And then other times you're going to have to pick. You're going to pick a solution that is not the solution for the people that are standing right in front of you 9 to 5 every day in the country that you live in. And it's a hard lesson to learn, but those are the two hard lessons that I think will probably hold you in good stead.
Cool. You can just pass the mic over. Just to check, when you say VCs don't work, you mean video conferencing, not venture capitalists.
Yeah, video conferencing. Yeah, venture capitalists is a different conversation.
Hi. So I won the hoodie at Startup Stories, so I'll forfeit this time. 3 quick questions. First 2 for everyone in the room. Raise your hand if you're not a developer or designer. Excellent. Raise your hand if you cringe at things like HR, soft skills, and wishy-washy soft stuff. Excellent, thank you. And then my last question is to anyone in OfferZen. So at Startup Stories, we spoke about how the best life hack or business hack being a tech lead is to hire people who are smarter than you. But then also the greatest stumbling block being a tech lead is that the people stuff is quite difficult and you've got to kind of make it up and wing it as you go along because it's all very new and we're not people-oriented people. So the question there was, are you aware that people experts exist? And there are books and academics and theories and a lot of the inspiring and real and valid anecdotes that were mentioned tonight are fantastic, but they are real life hacks and reasons and nitty-gritty devil in the detail theories that are involved in what you're going through and that we could have challenged and really got into the detail of that tonight. So my question to OfferZen, anyone, not you, no pressure. Why do we not have people experts on the panel tonight? Why do we not have culture experts?
What makes you assume that we're not people experts?
Okay, great question. So you're a person, right? Sure. That makes you a person expert. You've worked with people and you've learnt a bunch of things, right? That makes you great at leading teams. But have you got down into the dirty details about really the theories and what works and what doesn't work? Have you read John Katzenbach's latest book? Have you engaged with Google's 10 life hacks around what makes leading teams great? And have you really unlocked the people components of your organizations? Or did you just learn a few things and these are how they're applied? So for example, Tuckman's storming, what is it? Norming.
Norming.
The other one before performing
It's
and then the last
forming.
one
It's
performing.
Sorry,
right?
norming
Those guys. And then all the rest of the theories, right? They're there and they make sense and we can workshop them in these spaces. But we're being anecdotal. And we're having women talking about dick pics. And yes, they're challenges, but we're normalizing things that don't work for tech inclusion and that are risky, especially in a South African tech space.
Sure. Okay. So, I don't profess to be an HR expert. I haven't gone through the studies to become a human resources manager, but I've certainly read the books talking about work rules, originals, the list goes on, in terms of lessons about people and how we've come to operate and behave the way that we do. But putting that into practice, and you talk about inclusion, putting that into practice in an organization that's as diverse as organizations are in South Africa is hard. I get the comment about the D picks in a small startup, but that's unique to their particular culture. And also, the culture will attract the people that are comfortable with that type of rhetoric, and it'll make it okay until it's not okay. Inclusion requires that you actually tend to pay attention to the finer details of people throughout the organization, and then make the decisions that prevent hurdles cropping in, like I said before, of putting situations in play between people that then force them down the exclusion path. It's going to sound cryptic, but what I'm really saying is that you can't be a leader of an organization or any group of people if you are not a people expert. And if you place more of your time in focusing on your KPIs and your deliveries and your deadlines than you do in engaging with the people around you, then you are not a people leader or a manager.
I agree. I'm not talking about KPIs.
Okay, sorry. I just want to give some other people a chance to also ask questions. So, sorry, can I...
I might not have answered the question, though. Okay, so just repeat your question for me, just in case I've misunderstood it.
My question was for OfferZen.
Oh, sure, okay. Sorry, my bad.
Right, so at the risk of being controversial, I consider these people, and I after speaking to the likes of Quraish, understand that he has people that help him understand people, right? So we didn't do that because our intention was to get people up here that have had the coalface of trying to implement culture. And the CEO's primary role, as I believe, in any case, the person that's primarily responsible for CEO and for culture in an organization is the CEO. So we chose CEOs to be here tonight for that reason.
Thank you. The answer to the question, what is culture not, was not answered.
Yes,
just leaving
noted, thank you.
Well, just to add to your question, I think it's a great question that does need to get asked of organizations throughout South Africa as a whole. And just to talk about it, most traditional organizations don't elevate people practice to the top level of decision making. It is always an afterthought to the decision that you make with regards to the company and the revenue and the top line and the bottom line. And then, can you please go and get the people situation sorted out to make that a reality? So I do think it's a very valid question, but it does need to be posed across the whole country.
Yeah, I can also just want to throw my 2 cents while we go around the room. Is that I think I love hard questions. I really do. I think it's excellent to challenge these things. I think that you don't know what you don't know, and being an extraordinarily like fresh entrepreneur, I'm really new to this. I don't know what I don't know, and I rely a lot on mentors, on people asking hard questions, on people that are more experienced, on people calling me out for my humor, which is offside sometimes, saying that it's offsides. You know, you actually have to be better now. You're not a student building a website out of a dorm room. You're now running a company that's valued at like tens of millions of rands. You actually have to be better. So it's actually taking these moments to reflect and be like, now is like an inflection point, a turning point, where you learn about how to be better, but also being true to who we are. You know, we're a company that humor is part of our brand, but also, you know, it's finding that line. So you don't know what you don't know. So thank you for showing me something new that I do know now.
Okay, that hand is just staying up at the back. You deserve the mic. Oh, right. Sorry, I was looking at you, Tumi. Okay, let's hear from Stefan.
Something slightly different. We spoke about enabling people to be owners of a company. We spoke about passion. Once you've enabled that, how do you rein it back into a focus of what have you implemented in your companies to to direct that passion and that ownership into the direction that you believe the company should be going into, rather than sort of going into all sorts of different directions along the way?
Yeah, I'll take it. So we're actually in the middle of a process at the moment, so I'll talk to you about that process currently. But the way that we currently work with this is my job. I spoke about the machine and the different cogs, and my cog's no bigger than your cog. The responsibility of my cog is to provide direction. It's to provide the landing place that we want to get to, but define it in a way that it's all-encompassing for every single individual in the organization. So not just the tech people, not just the testers, not just the BAs. It's the finance people, it's the HR people, it's every single executive. It's got to be defined in a way that encapsulates every single individual's accountability and responsibility in the company, and they have to contribute if we're going to get there. So that's the one. But you define it in such a way, and this is the second point, that they are free to decide how they will get there. So you will not be dictating how they will execute their roles, and in some instances, what they will do to achieve that goal. But you've got to put something in place that is encapsulating, and that is harder than it sounds. Because every time you come up with something that sounds cool, I'll give you a good example. We put in an objective in our space to remove 50% of manual tasks. That's the end goal that we put in place for everybody. But where we started was, I wanted CI/CD implemented across 70% of all deployments across the company. Now, that's very difficult for somebody sitting as a credit controller in the finance team to hang their hat on. So we went slightly differently. We had to unpack that quite a bit, talk to a number of people, and everybody came back at me. It was seen as Quraish's stupid objective, and rightly so, because it wasn't all encapsulating. And the feedback that came back from everybody was what landed us at the remove 50% of manual tasks by a particular date. Now, the passion and the care, the ideas that are coming from that, I can tell you now, I wouldn't have thought of. And most of the other execs that were sitting in the room when we were debating this particular topic didn't think of. And now we're ending up with a whole bunch of initiatives that people are putting their energy into while we maintain the demand that we currently have. So the result has been evident for us, and hopefully it's sustainable. We don't know, it's new for us, so we'll see as time goes on. But it requires that you provide them with a North Star to then point themselves at.
Can I dive in?
Fair enough.
I've got a very practical response to that. Metrics. So we just build really cool dashboards that just track all our metrics. And we just have, we track the bottlenecks along the way. So you'll see that, okay, cool, what do you want to achieve? Your North Star. What is your North Star metric? What's like, okay, we've made it. And then going back to that first user journey of like, someone first interacts with the brand. They hear Dex Connect. How do we get to the end? And then you look at every single step along the way. You look at those metrics. We track everything. And we say, where is it like failing? And then there's 4 steps that come into that. First is, we all understand the goal, what we're trying to achieve. Next is the metrics. We agree these are the metrics, what they should be. And then you set quarterly goals for that. The third thing we look at then are problems. So, okay, there's a huge bottleneck with, let's say, people aren't replying to messages, for example. So there's a bottleneck there. Is that a tech issue? Is that because people just don't like sending messages? I don't know. Let's also talk about the problems. And only once we're at that stage can we then design solutions for that. So we've kind of trying to whistle it down into kind of a process of figuring out how to get where we're going to. And I think having clarity around that helps a lot, because otherwise if things are going wrong, you're just like, oh my God, there's a fire, how do we put it out? But actually, no, okay, actually this is the point there, you can pinpoint it, that's where the fire is. And this is how we're going to put it out.
Okay. Sorry, to me you had your hand up for like an hour at the back there. It's incredible.
Hello. I work out. I'm just kidding, I don't. Hi, everyone. So I want to circle back to the inclusion question. So disclaimer, a lot of my time is spent on researching diversity and inclusion in tech. And I think organizational culture is part and parcel of that. And so one of the things I've been very interested in is the discussion around inclusion and how there are people experts who will figure out inclusion and diversity issues, and then when the need arises, they will feed that back into the culture. And I think that fundamentally misses the point, and there is a huge missed opportunity there. Because if you are not starting with how do we have an inclusive culture for the company that we want to be, you are constantly going to butt heads with but diversity, but inclusion. So it shouldn't take a single mother, to the point of the lady who raised a question before, it shouldn't take a single mother who has, let's be frank, less power than the CEO or the head of whatever department in a company to be so embarrassed that they can't join an event because they've got to look after their children at home in the evening for the company culture to change. Because from a power dynamic point of view, that's a very difficult conversation to have. Similarly, it shouldn't take, somebody who has had to take 3 taxis to get to an 8 a.m. interview, so they woke up at 4 a.m., to have to ask to say, I'm so sorry, but could we move the interview by half an hour because my taxi broke down? Our inclusion policies should be very cognizant of the country that we live in and the lived experience of the people who live in this country. And so I think when we start from that inclusive basis, then our company cultures won't have to refer to the people experts who will tell the other people experts how to rejig organizational culture in order to fit those people who just happen to not fit into the way that we like and the way that we are. So I just wanted to add that to the discussion.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to take... So can we take one more question, or does that require an answer to me? Are we good? Cool. Thank you, that was a great point. Okay. Cool. Last question. You clearly see that keeping your hand up is the way to... So, one last diehard. Okay, last question. Leather jacket guy. Sorry, don't know your name. Chris. Thanks, Chris.
Hi, thanks. So, I like the idea of, winning the culture battle by having people sort of act and think like owners within the company. From a sort of cultural enablement perspective, how do you achieve that? Because you guys are effectively parents, we're babysitters, and it's easy, specifically in the tech space, to go and get another gig if the company doesn't work. So how do you sort of build a culture, or enable a culture that gets people to feel like they are owners and that, they've got a thread in this spool of success?
Is it okay if I take it? No. So it starts with consistency, and consistency of asking the right question to everybody. It also starts with transparency. So there is no information that should be off bounds to the people in your company. I know that most organizations work through a layer of secrecy depending on seniority, and information is then opened up as you go further and further up that hierarchy. You have to fight that battle and break that norm, and transparency needs to be key. The questions that you ask people, so back to my first point, have to be the questions that you should be answering. A lot of the time I find myself saying, if you were in my position, what decision would you make? What problem would you tackle first? Down to diversity, I'm trying to tackle the problem in our organization. We've got a boys club type mentality that has existed in the organization for a really long time. I'm not a part of that boys club because I'm not white, but it's meant to be a joke. At work, they all laugh about this, I'm not white. I can make racist jokes if I want to. So we're trying to have the conversation about this particular topic. And at work, I'll give you an example. So some of the ladies that I was talking to, because the problem is not male-female gender bias, it's actual diversity. But it went towards male-female gender bias because it's the easiest one to pick on at the moment. And they brought up the point of males at the organization discussing other females, their looks, and just talking about them in a derogatory manner in our canteen area where, over 1,000 people have lunch without any concern for whether they're going to be reprimanded for this. That changed very quickly the day I stepped into office. But back to the point, the question that I asked back was, if you were in my position, what would you do? Because I think that a lot of people fail to take on the further steps. They drop the problem at your footsteps, and they don't behave like an owner. And I could take the decision, very easily. I would make the call. I would run my boot so far up those people's asses and kick them out of the company, because that's not the way the company works. It doesn't talk to our values, it doesn't talk to our principles. But the better way to go about this is to seek out their advice. And that's just one example of any number of decisions that I've taken over the last 15 months where the decisions have not been mine. It's been the decision of the people. There are a tiny handful of calls that I've made. And the way I judge whether the organization is going in the right direction is if the number of decisions that I have to make on an annual basis is in the single digits, I'm doing well. And so is the company. And that's how you create owners out of people. Consistency, asking them how you would make the call and what call they would make if they were in your position, and making sure that they've got full transparency into everything. That situation, there was full transparency with regards to what happened, who did it, and what we did about it. That's how I think you create owners.
Alrighty, cool. So I know there's lots of questions. Everybody wants to talk about lots of stuff. So can we do that afterwards outside with beers and pudding? So right now I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to say thank you very much to you two for your energy and your wisdom, respectively. That was a joke. Kinda. Okay, no, but seriously, guys, thank you so much for sitting here, answering the easy questions, the hard questions. We appreciate your opinions. Everyone else, thank you for coming, for hanging out with us. Please stay, chat with people. Thank you for the hard questions. Thank you for the easy questions. Yeah, so thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you very much to our sponsors, Derivco, Aruba, Jamaica. Sorry, probably not allowed to say that. Luno. Thank you very much, Luno. There's a bunch of people here from Luno tonight as well. And then special mention, it always goes out, Alex standing right at the back there and Candace over here. They pulled this thing off together, so thank you. Okay, and then before we go off and do our dessert, we have a hoodie winner, Jen van Heerden. Can you stand? That's well done. That's the well done signal. Okay. Everyone, thank you so much for coming. If you want to chat to us, if you want to continue the conversation, come find us. You know who we are. And have a great night. Thank you so much for driving out. God bless.